So it is my dear, dear pleasure to tell you all our final Carapace favorite storyteller is our very own Randy Osborne.
It's a story about my grandmother who she raised me. I'm gonna raise this. How about that? Okay. Story about my grandmother who raised me from the age of 6 after my parents' divorce. She liked Edgar Allan Poe. She liked Nathaniel Hawthorne. She liked the Bible, not the New Testament so much. And she liked detective magazines. In fact, I learned how to read on those true detective magazines with the pictures of the weapons and the shallow graves. I remember her name was Manuel, called her fan. I remember I had one of the magazines, struggling with it. And I said, "Mad, what is this?" It's countenance. What is that? She says, countenance means face. He bashed her face in, and then he slit her throat. Okay, so I can continue reading. But she was immensely kind to me and very protective of me all of my young life and into early teenagerhood. I slept in her sewing room, which was a little enclosure off the main hallway. I was a miserable kid. Since my parents had split up, I felt just completely lost to the world. And I remember at night she would come in, and I would had my face buried in the pillow, and she thought I was asleep. She would just rest her hand right on my back, just very gently. I suppose maybe to see if I was still breathing. So one night, I should mention that I grew up also with my aunt and uncle, who were close to my age. Was Matt and spaced for 5 children so far apart that 2 of them still lived at home. So I had kind of a brother and sister, but I still felt like an outsider. We were always getting in trouble together. One night we were watching a horror movie on TV. We loved those. She was constantly on us about watching them late at night. Don't do that. You know what happens. You have nightmares. If you even, just don't. But we were watching. I remember this night. It was a classic horror movie called The Beast with 5 Fingers. And it was about a concert pianist who was murdered. And his disembodied hand came back and started getting revenge on him. We were loving it. My grandmother was watching with us. Mad was back in the corner, and I could see her face shining in the blue light. The movie ended. We were terrified. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. We couldn't go to bed. It was impossible. And she said, I've told you about this over and over. I've told you. So Peter, my uncle, said, let's go up on the balcony on the 2nd floor where he had his telescope. And we'll, try to see the moon, look at the stars, try to calm down. So we go up there, and we were taking turns. I remember it was my turn. I'm looking through the telescope, trying to find Mars. Peter had gone inside to go to the bathroom. Kathleen was standing next to me, and she screamed like this blood-curdling scream right next to me. So I pulled back from the telescope. Look at her. She's pointing over here off the railing of the balcony. So I look down at the drain pipe along the rim of the balcony, and there's a hand. And it's creeping along the edge of the drain pipe toward us. So I screamed. Kathleen is still screaming. Peter comes out of the bathroom, zipping up his zip. He starts screaming, and he doesn't even know what he's screaming about. And we all go tumbling down the stairs and burst into the kitchen. Anne is wiping down the counter, and she says, what? And we can just barely talk. We're all stumbling over a word. We did. If the hand on the balcony, she's just staring at us. And she said, how many times have I told you about those movies? You can't watch those movies before bed. Now, you're going to have to go to bed now. Get upstairs. So we did. And for decades, literally decades after that, at most family gatherings, we told that story. It was either me or Kathleen who would tell it, because two people saw the same thing. It's like, I could see how one of us could hallucinate that, but we couldn't have shared a hallucination. So it was one Thanksgiving, I was telling the story, and my grandmother was sitting over in the corner, kind of half smiling. And I said, man, what are you smiling about? You know what that did to us, how scared we were, and what a peculiar mystery for all these years. And she said, oh, McKay. McKay was her nickname for me because it was a TV show back then called Adventures in Paradise. It starred Gardner McKay. He was a blonde, handsome, green bug guy. He was a sailor, and he sailed the South Pacific, solving everybody's problems that he encountered. And she thought I was her handsome little boy, so she called me McKay. She said, oh, McKay, do you remember the day the men delivered that rug in the living room? I did remember. She said, well, do you remember how they brought it in? And I said, yeah, there was two guys. They were on a pole. It was rolled up on the pole, and they were carrying it like somebody carrying a body on a stretcher. They were coming in. And she said, yeah, well, while you kids were on the balcony, I went down to the basement, got that pole, and I got a latex glove, and stuffed a rag in it, and I went out in the backyard, and I just like this. And she was fishing in the sky. And then she started wheezing with laughter, you know, and she did quite a bit. And I think about that a lot, and about her, of course, especially this time of year when the weather's getting a little bit crisp. And we had a pretty hard life. We were very poor. But I remember thinking not too long ago that she kind of introduced me to a paradise of sorts that I got to adventure in. And sometimes, this time of year especially, I can't sleep, just like back then. And got my head, you know, face down on the pillow, and sometimes I sense almost for sure of my hand coming down my back and just touching it very lightly just to see, look, I'm okay.
You can go with the red, please. All right.